Hello everyone, Courtney Grunholz here again at my book Nook. Well, today, if you couldn't see, I am wearing one of my favorite Supernatural shirts with Dean Winchester. He loves his pies. In my last video, I started talking about books that are in my romance collection, the romance novels that I read. And sometimes romance novels can turn into, there's like romantic horror, romantic fantasy, romantic sci-fi. I mean, romance can be in any kind of genre. I should know I write about romance. It's what I'm good at. So, today we're going to continue with the books in my romance collection, and some of them might start turning into the realms of sci-fi fantasy kind of fiction. So we will just kind of continue where we left off, and if the video starts running long, we will just go through the process again. So, as you can see, I brought in more books to my little book nook to go through them and kind of maybe share a little bit about some of them. Some books, it's been a long time since I read them, and some I haven't read yet. I have tons of books, lots of free time, so I'm afraid that if I start reading my books, I'll go through them too fast. But eventually, I plan to return back out into the world and working an actual job again. So my time will be limited, which will give me time to read, but not read through all my books. So, back to where we were yesterday. The next book in my romance collection, it is from Fawcett Gold Medal Publishing, and it's through Random House, and it's a historical romance. It is called Princess by Galen Foley. It is about a man named Darius Santiago. I love these romance novel names. They're just so great. He is a spy for a king, and he begins to fall in love with the princess of the kingdom that he is sworn to protect, Princess Serafina. Again, I love these names. He's known her almost all of her life. He's been like her bodyguard protector, and he is sent with the task of protecting her, as it seems like most of these historical romance things kind of do. You have a beautiful young woman needs a protector from some sort of evil. So, but she's actually engaged to someone else in this book. But, of course, what always happens in romance novels. Lots of a little bit of sexual tension, and dashing hero has to protect a beautiful woman. Sometimes they can't be with each other. She's high class, he's low class. It's just, the way those stories go. And it has just a crown on the front, but on the back, very, very handsome lead character, Darius Santiago. I love these names. I love them. I actually found that book again, like I did with Forever by Jude Devereaux, when I was up at college in Moorhead, Kentucky, at some little bookstore coffee shop. Just like camera on my laptop a little bit. So it didn't have anything interesting on the cover, but then I turned it on the back and it told the story. So I got kind of interested. So, and of course, princesses and romance and historical fiction. It's just a fun read. Next, this is from Zebra Fiction. This is by Shannon Drake. It is called The Awakening. And I just saw this cover when I was walking through Walmart one day, and it looked interesting. And then when I turned it on the back, it takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, in modern times. A musician from New Orleans. So you throw together Salem, Massachusetts, known for witchcraft, and then you throw in New Orleans with its gothic tones, and then of course, Anne Rice novels are set in New Orleans, so adds a little bit of gothic theme in this cover, so I got kind of intrigued. But there's a musician from New Orleans named Megan O'Casey, and she's coming home for she's coming back home to Salem to perform some shows around Halloween or All Hallows Eve with her husband Finn. But as they get into town, Finn starts acting a little strange, and weird things start to happen, and start having, like these really intense, dreams, and it's just, when Megan notices that her husband Finn's changing his personality, where it's almost like he's almost like he can't trust her, and he acts cold towards her. So, one thing is, a cousin of hers is married to a man, and they practice Wicca. So, is it connected to that? Is it something else? It is. It's dark. It's gothic. It deals with witchcraft. I like stuff like that. I grew up when like The Craft was like one of the big movies that came out. So you throw in like paranormal, supernatural elements into romance, I'm gonna eat it up. And this is a really good book. I rated it on Goodreads as I read it, and it showed that it's part of like a series of books. So I did not know that. So I'd be interested to find out more of these later. And again, like I said about when I get books and they have stickers on them, I try not to take them off, because I tried to take one off the back of this book, and now it's just all. I hate when they put stickers on books. I mean, they have no choice, but. So, next up, I want to pull this out and skip a little bit different. I can't remember where I found this book. I'm thinking a Dollar General store again, or the same place where I found Princess. But this is a leisure historical romance book, and it is by Elaine Barbary, and it is called To Meet Again. But those covers are what get you. So it takes place, in the 20th century, around, the early 1900s, like stagecoaches and the Wild West, and the heroes wear white hats, the villains wear black ones. They rob stagecoaches, gunfights at corrals and stuff like that. But so a woman named Thea heads out to this land, and her stagecoach is robbed. And later, in the office of her sister's examining room, because she's a doctor, one of the men that robbed the stagecoach has been wounded, and he bears a resemblance to Thea's dead fiance, Wade Preston. So Wade was killed on the day that they were going to be married, and this man looks exactly like Wade. Same eyes, same voice, everything is the same. But he's different. He's colder. He's not as, loving and caring as Wade was. But, he is drawn to him because he looks like the man that she loved. So, of course, tension. He tries to keep her away from him, says that he's not a good man. He's a bad man. She should stay away. But, you know, she's drawn to him. And there's a tagline on the back of this that says, "We'll meet again," because those are the last words that Wade said to Thea before he died. So, I'm just a sucker for romance like that. So, yeah. It's a pretty good book. I haven't read it in a while, but, you know, like I said, I see an image on the front, kind of interesting, read the back of it. The back's sometimes what draws me the most. So, it's another one of those. I moved a couple over here, because some of these are going to start going into fantasy. I didn't want to go to this one yet. I'm going to save that one for a minute. I have 3 books here that are, 2 of them are collaborations with 3 other writers, and one is just by Nora Roberts. So, Nora Roberts writes tons of romance books, and she gets together with these 3 other authors, Jill Gregory, Ruth Ryan Langan, and Marianne Willman, and they combine their short stories into these collections. I have 2 books from that collection, and then Nora Roberts has also released a few books that combine her short stories from these series into her own book, which is what this one is. So, one of these stories that's in one of these collections is also in this book. So, the series is Once Upon Something. There's Once Upon a Kiss, Once Upon a Castle, Once Upon a Rose, and Once Upon a Dream, and Once Upon a Star. I have Once Upon a Castle and Once Upon a Kiss. So, the first book is, it's not really in the series. The first one that I actually remember getting was Once Upon a Kiss, and it has the first story by Nora Roberts about a demon slayer who arrives in 21st century New York and meets a man who is a police officer. So she comes here because she's after a creature that's kind of like a vampire, and so she comes here to slay this creature and meets this police officer, and they get embroiled, in the sexual tension kind of thing. So she's a hard ass, he's a hard ass, but she's from she's like in this different dimension, and he's just a hard-boiled cop. So the next one is Impossible by Jill Gregory. 2 warring families turn into a battle of the sexes when a bewitching beauty finds herself kidnapped by her sworn enemy. So, like that one. Sealed with a Kiss by Ruth Ryan Langan is a father has given his daughter's hand in marriage to a warlord, but she ends up falling in love with one of his warriors that is sent to protect her on the way to his kingdom for their wedding. I like that. It kind of reminds me of the Lancelot, Guinevere, Arthur thing that happens in Excalibur. Good movie, by the way, Excalibur. And if you love stuff that involves King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, you should see it. So, and then Kiss Me Kate by Marianne Willman. A lovely American inherits an English manor, and she ends up meeting a prince who has been enchanted with a curse. It is kind of a Frog Prince kind of story, and it has elements in it that I remember that aren't as serious as the 3 stories before it, because the first one with Nora Roberts is, kind of serious, but, of course, she's not from around here. She doesn't understand things, so kind of like Castiel in Supernatural, or Dr. Brennan from Bones, where they don't understand certain things and certain protocols about interacting with people. So that one's kind of okay, but it's still a very serious story. This very last one's kind of more fantasy, fantastical. So, but all of them involve a kiss. To what the kiss pertains, you'd have to read it to find out. And the next one in the series that I have is Once Upon a Castle. So always the first story is by Nora Roberts, and then Jill Gregory, then Ruth Ryan Lagan, and Marianne Wilman. So in Nora Roberts' story called Spellbound, a lady casts a spell on a man that she loves. And doing this spell causes something bad to happen, and it needs the power of love to save it. So I love stories like that. So of course it grabbed my attention. And it's also in this book by Nora Roberts, which is a collection of her short stories called A Little Magic. And what these are is they all center around stories that take place in Ireland. So, it takes place in Ireland and it involves a castle and a spell and true love, and I'm in. So, the next one is Castle Doom by Jill Gregory. So, a gypsy prophesizes a love spell that is going to bring together a pair of lovers to fight evil and fight their own battles inside of their hearts. Sounds interesting. Ruth Ryan Lagan's Falcon's Lair. Love that name. Falcon's Lair. Falcon Crest. I like it. A young American travels to England to free her father's friend from a fatal curse and discovers a helping hand from a charming, handsome spirit. A haunted spirit in a castle in England. Oh yeah, I'm there. And Marianne Wilman's Dragon Spell. With the help of a meddling sorceress, a brave young princess sets out to save her kingdom and wins the heart of a dashing warrior along the way. It's been a while since I read these, but they all sound good to me. I mean, I bought the book, didn't I? And so, of course, I already told you what Spellbound was about. I don't remember if it tells me what all is supposed to happen in these other books. So, like I said, it's been a while since I read them, but they are all Irish stories, so they center in Ireland. Ever After is about an enchanting woman as she journeys to an otherworldly land and introduces a handsome artist to the transforming power of love. I like that. That sounds nice. And In Dreams links a young woman to a stranger's past and to the curse that has trapped him forever in the eternity of his own dreams. Very nice. And of course they all center around Ireland, and it's called A Little Magic, so magic is involved. And again, I like stories that deal with stuff that's centered around Celtic myths and legends. So, good read there. Next up is a book that my friend Amy got me for my birthday a long time ago. I can't remember which birthday it was, but she bought this book for me because she knew I like romance novels, and so I keep it for sentimental reasons, and it's a good story, so it's not bad. It is by Kristen Hanna, and it is called Angel Falls. A woman named Michaela Campbell falls into a coma and leaves around her husband and her children. So he does what they normally do in romantic stories with someone they love in a coma. He talks to her and, tells her about, their kids and their life together, trying to, hoping that she will, she'll wake up. But then he finds out that she was married before to a man named Julian True. So he turns to, Julian to try and help him. So, when, Liam brings Julian into the picture, inevitably Michaela wakes up from her coma and she can't remember her life with Liam and thinks that she's still married to Julian. So, it's, I can see why she got this book for me. It says a lot about, how much you love someone and how much you will be committed to them when the worst possible thing can happen. Sickness, illness, death, learning maybe that you can't have children, you're, just something that will strengthen the bond between a husband and a wife. And so it is a really good book. And I just, I keep it to remember my friend. And I love that Amy loved me so much to give me this book. So, Angel Falls by Kristen Hannon is a really good book. Alright, I guess we'll make a transition to how romance and fantasy work together. One of my favorite movies happens to be The Princess Bride, directed by Rob Reiner with Carrie Elways and Robin Wright. I guess she is Robin Wright again. She's married to Sean Penn, but and it has a really good cast. It has Fred Savage and Billy Crystal and Andre the Giant, and it's just one of those movies. You can watch it as a kid, and when you grow up, you can still watch it. It might be a little different for you as an adult than when you were a child, but it's still a wonderful movie. It's a movie that everybody should watch. And I actually have a copy of the book, The Princess Bride, written by William Goldman, who is no longer with us. In the book, it says The Princess Bride is by S. Morgenstern. So it's William Goldman writing this story as S. Morgenstern. So, of course, it's about a young woman named Buttercup who falls in love with the farm boy, Wesley, and she orders him around the farm, and then she eventually, figures out when he tells her, as you wish, whenever she commands him to just do the most menial of things, it means that, he loves her. So he wants to go off into the world to try to make himself, better for her, and his ship is attacked by the dread pirate Roberts, who takes no survivors, so Buttercup thinks that Wesley's dead, so she becomes forced to marry Prince Humperdinck. And she gets kidnapped by Fezzik, who is a gentle, rhyming giant. His friend, Inigo, a Spaniard who is good with a sword and wants revenge for the death of his father from the Six-Fingered Man. And Prince Humperdinck has Count Rugen, helping him, do all these evil plans, because Prince Humperdinck is not a nice prince. He's the evil prince. So, Worlds Collide. You all should know the movie, but there's sword fights and there's fantastical elements and true love and revenge and friendship and it's just I mean it's how can you not love it? If you love the movie, you love the book. And I love how the cover has like this map of like the countries of like Florin and Gilder, the two main kingdoms in the book. And it's it's romance and high fantasy. I mean, women can read it, men can read it. I don't see why sometimes genres have to be so pigeonholed, where like, oh, women can't read like horror or mystery or crime or Western novels. They just have to read their romance and their girly books, and men can't be invested in reading fantasy because it involves like princessy things and true love. I mean, I just don't see how you can be so pigeonholed into just liking one certain genre of books, or somebody telling me that you can't read that. If in the future I have a son and he wants to read this book, he can read it. He wants to read some of my other books, I'm going to let him. I don't care what my husband says. I'm going to let him read whatever he wants to read. As long as it's tasteful. Until the time when he's old enough to read things that are a little mature for, mature audiences. So, but I just think you can read whatever you want to read. If you're a girl and you want to read, Western novels, you go right ahead. If you're a guy and you want to pick up a book by Danielle Steele and read it, go ahead and read it. I mean, who cares? I mean, you have my permission, but you don't need my permission. So, and next I have a book by Orson Scott Card. He's mostly known for doing like the Ender's Game series. I heard about this book a long time ago, and another thing that I like in books, as I mentioned before, I like when they take fairy tales or children's stories and give them more kind of an adult sort of flair, where there's more like violence or darker elements, maybe a little bit of sex, just something to spice it up and make it different. Because sometimes most fairy tales, when they were originated, they were a lot darker and they were toned down that you could tell them to your children. And then some authors go and take those stories and bring them back for an adult audience. So Sleeping Beauty is one of my favorite fairy tales. So anytime I find a book that has a plot that centers around that story, I get it. And this is no exception. It is called Enchantment by Orson Scott Card. And it adds a twist to it. So there is a princess named Katerina who is placed underneath a Sleeping Beauty type of spell, and she is guarded by some unknown force, and a boy named Ivan stumbles upon her. He stumbles upon her first when he's a little boy visiting his cousin in around, well, what you would call Carpathia, and when he becomes an adult, he's drawn back to this clearing where he found this Princess Katerina covered with leaves on the ground. And he specializes in old languages, old Slavic languages. So he's drawn back to the spot when he's, an older man, but not, an old man. He's college aged. So when he gets there, he finds this princess again, and he kisses her, and she wakes up, and she asks in an old world tongue if he will marry her. And he gets transported back into the past with her. And so he has to adapt himself to this, this old ancient world. And so it deals with a lot of kind of Russian Slavic folklore. And one of the antagonists in the story is Baba Yaga, who is a witch in Russian literature. And she's responsible for the curse. And then it goes through a kind of flip later on where Katerina has to come into Ivan's world and adapt to it there. And he takes her home to meet his family, and his mother is ecstatic about meeting her, but Ivan is promised to marry a woman named Ruth. And so there's conflict in Katerina's world. Ivan has his modern world, and it's just fantastic elements woven together in this time-hopping, time-traveling adventure. But, so, it's an interesting read, and of course, it is like a romance novel because, two people from two different worlds, they have to have tension and interact with each other because they come from different worlds. In her world, she's a princess, but sometimes being a princess doesn't mean, you get to lead. You're just property. Your father's a king. You're a princess. You can be given to any man. And Ivan's world, women are more modern, and they're free to think and free to do things that they want. And back in Katerina's time, a man is judged by being how strong and tall and a good fighter and everything. And in our world, you don't have to be built like Conan the Barbarian or be a good fighter. You can be intelligent and smart in other things, and nobody really judges you on your manhood because you killed this many beasts in the forest, or you've done all these heroic deeds. So it's interesting. So it has those elements, and it has fantasy elements of magic and curses and the time travel, but then it throws together like ancient legends, Baba Yaga and witches and just all this stuff. It's very interesting. So this is the type of book that a man or a woman can read. So, I mean, probably a lot more men are more familiar with Orson Scott Card's Enders series, but I think it's a pretty good book. So of course I ramble, which causes my videos to run on for like 30 minutes or more. But so that's most of my romance novel collection, and as you can tell, I'm now kind of going into the realms of fantasy with romantic elements thrown in. So I guess we'll stop this part and begin next time when I am going to delve into maybe 2 or 3 authors, depending how long I ramble, that deal with fantasy fiction and fairy tale elements. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll come back for more. This is Courtney Gruenholz from my book Nook, and until I see you next time, have a nice day.